What's up, friends? Strava Craft Coffee is offering an incredible deal to our existing DNVR members right now. There's so many perks to becoming a member, and this is just one. This week until midnight on the 16th, DNVR members will receive 30% off their purchase at Strava. Guys, if you haven't tried this incredible CBD-infused coffee, now is the time. If you've taken advantage of their 20% off in the past, now you can enjoy this awesome 30% off coupon if you're a member. You should receive that in your emails with details on how to retrieve your code. 'Tis the season of giving as well, so this is a great opportunity to send a friend or anyone in your life a little order of Strava Craft Coffee. So many people who have tried it have talked about different benefits, but the number one we hear is that it takes off that jittery edge from the coffee while still giving you the energy you're looking for. So check out Strava Craft Coffee, and if you're a member, use the code to get your 30% off, or if you just want to get 20% off because you're not a member yet, and we'll talk about that in a second, use the code DNVR20 to get your 20% off. Let's jump into the show.
Number one for the one and only DNVR. 2 goes out to Zach, Mace, RK, and the bar. 3 for Mr. B in that old trophy case. Number 4 we're still waiting for. Well, bring on the chase. Out on the field, a mile high, Broncos win is our desire. Couple with a breakfast crew and a friend, bleed orange and blue till the bitter end. Come and join us at the DNVR. We are DNVR.
Welcome in to the DNVR Broncos podcast on a Feel Good Friday. Of course, Feel Good Friday and the DNVR Broncos podcast presented by MSU Denver Online. Go over to msudenver.edu/online to scope out all they have to offer. 750 total classes, 40 plus hybrid programs, so many different ways for you to further your education and get that degree you've been waiting on. A lot of times life gets in the way, and we totally understand that, but there's no better way to get on track with that online education than at msudenver.edu/online. Rigorous and affordable programs taught by professors who bring the real world into the classroom.
My boys, what's up? Happy Friday. Oh, man, Bum Talk, Feel Good. Raiders week. We get to wrap up. Man, I can't wait for that. We're only 48 hours away from the first time the Broncos play the Las Vegas Raiders.
Yeah, It doesn't sound right. How many times have you guys this week said or thought Oakland?
I have a new thing where I just don't say the locations anymore because I already have the problem with the Chargers. So it's just the Chargers and the Raiders. I don't care where they play.
That's smart.
Zach, you?
Oh, multiple times. I've typed it multiple times. I've said it multiple times. It's tough. And it's November, and so if you want, when it's cold, it's tough.
Yeah, it's happened twice when talking on air or on podcast. And the thing is, I worked on it. I was actually, when I was coming back from Atlanta, I kept kind of thinking to myself, Las Vegas Raiders, because I was trying to get through the week without making a mistake. And I didn't even make it 48 hours after I had that exercise sitting on the plane trying to get it right. I'm a little mad at myself. Eventually I'll get used to it, but I don't know. I mean, this one may not take it. It's a little tough to have Vegas and accept Vegas as an NFL town. I'm not quite there yet.
Man, you're pretty tough on yourself, Mace. Don't worry about it. I mean, if you call them the Los Angeles Raiders, I'm not going to be hard on you.
The question is, and I should have gone back and actually listened to this in every game. Have any officials said, like, timeout Oakland?
Maybe.
Yeah, but if it had happened, we would have heard about it, right? Because it would have been a joke on social media and all that.
Or maybe no one cares anymore.
Maybe. I think you're too hard, Mace.
I mean, I just know that decades ago when the Colts moved to Indianapolis and a referee said timeout Baltimore, like, oh, they got it, they got it wrong. I think the same thing happened with the Cardinals when they moved from St. Louis. So, yeah, it's
This is why I think when you move cities, you should also you should have to change your name. Like no one accidentally says like timeout Seattle Supersonics when Oklahoma City, like
right.
no one messes that up. But I do think the Raiders brand fits perfectly with Vegas, so we'll keep that one. Yeah, so the last thing that the Oakland Raiders ever did in their franchise history was lose to the Broncos, and now the Broncos will have a chance to start off their series with the Las Vegas Raiders by putting the loss in Las Vegas. Let's talk about this game, fellas, and we've throughout the week kind of touched on different things that the Broncos will have to do. But let's kind of start here and build the game plan like we love to do on Fridays. Let's start on the Broncos defensive side of the ball. And Zach, I'll start with you. What do they need to do on defense to slow down this Raiders offense, which slowly but surely under John Gruden has just gotten better and better?
Well, the Broncos need to do everything they can to stop the run. They have to commit every single resource to stopping the run. And they can do that this week because they're going to have Bryce Callahan and A.J. Boye back. At least it looks like Bryce Callahan is going to be back. A.J. Boye will be back, so that'll be huge. And you're just going to have to trust those two guys. And Bryce Callahan has played fantastic. A.J. Boye is a Pro Bowler. And you may be beat by Henry Ruggs on one deep one, but he's a guy that he hasn't been a consistent threat. So you don't have to worry about him going over the top of you multiple times in this game. But you're not going to have Shelby Harris. You're going to have a backup defensive line. Josie Jewell and Alexander Johnson should be just focused pretty much every single play on the run. And then maybe Justin Simmons is your Darren Waller stopper. So that's really the only guy that you have to consistently worry about in the pass game is Darren Waller. Put Justin Simmons on him, and then everyone else commit to stopping the run. If the Raiders beat you by rushing for 150 yards because you played the pass, shame on you. You can't let that happen. If Henry Ruggs burns you 3 times for 80-yard touchdowns each time, but you stop the run, well, I mean, then just good on Derek Carr for hitting those deep balls.
The thing is, even if the run isn't working, they're going to stick with it if the game is going in their favor. You take Josh Jacobs' workload over the course of the year. The Raiders, they're 4-0 when he rushes the ball 20 or more times. And the interesting thing there, guys, is that in 3 of those 4 games, he didn't make it to 4 yards a carry. So he's running frequently. He's not running necessarily effectively, at least in terms of getting big chunk plays. Now, one thing he did do in those 4 games was he scored 5 of his touchdowns on the ground this year, 3 against the Panthers, 2 against the Chiefs in that upset little over a month ago. So that's where it's obviously incumbent upon the defensive line to be as stout as it can be, considering it's all backups. But it's also about keeping the game flow in to a point where the Raiders don't become one-dimensional on the ground. If they do that, that means they're in front. So this is also, as much as the defense stopping the Raiders, it's also a pace game and a tempo game. It's also a game in which the Broncos, for once, need to get out to a fast start and force the Raiders away from saying, we're going to ride our workhorse in Josh Jacobs.
Oh, man. You know what sucks is the Raiders aren't a team where, in my opinion, you can just take away one of their dimensions and beat them because of it. I think they have one of the more balanced offenses in the league right now, in the sense that they can beat you 3 different ways. They can beat you by running the ball. They can beat you by dinking and dunking their way down the field. And now, this wasn't a worry in the past, but now they can beat you by going deep. And it's not just Henry Ruggs. It's Nelson Aguilar who has really been the more dangerous deep threat for them this year. He's kind of, found a home with a fresh start there in Las Vegas. I did it right. So I think the Broncos need to people are going to just hate this, but not allow the run.
Oh, no.
But essentially play bend, don't break. So you want to make sure to take away long runs. You want to make sure to take away long passes. And if you can do that by kind of protecting over the top and just having like a nice shell in there on defense, then I think that you can bow up in the red zone and try to force field goals and put this game on the offense. I don't think you can just try to take away the run because you're going to expose yourself to different parts of the passing game that they've just been really, really good at this year. So unless unless you're going to get a great game from your pass rushers, which I guess that would be the perfect scenario here, is take away the run and rush the passer really well, then you have a great chance. But to me, I think you're going to have to play bend, don't break on defense. Just try to take away big plays and bow your back in the red zone.
And here's my question to you, though, Ryan, is why I'm okay with giving all the responsibility to the secondary and saying you guys are on your own here is because they should be full strength. But in the run game, especially up front with that defensive line, you're dealing with an entirely second string line here, and that can be really, really rough. That's why I'm saying just lean on your secondary guys, lean on the highest paid secondary in the NFL. And you know what? If they don't come up for you, well, then, you're going to lose probably.
One thing, though, that probably is going to help here, you've got a backup defensive line for the Broncos, but the Raiders, they're still not going to have Trent Brown. They've got Colton Miller dealing with an injury. Now, they're stouter on the interior, but, guys, there could be some opportunities to expose some mismatches, whether you're talking about the defensive linemen kind of lining up a bit outside, or it's simply Malik Reed and Bradley Chubb over what could be two backup tackles here. There could be some opportunities to be disruptive against that Raiders front.
Quickly, there's been a lot, Broncos fans, I feel like there's a lot of hate towards Derek Carr. And I don't know if you guys saw this video that came out this week, but after watching this, I just don't know how you can hate Derek Carr.
Oh man, yeah. I got a lot of stories about playing the Broncos, especially when they had DeMarcus Ware, Von Miller, Malik Jackson, T.J. Ward, Aqib Talib, Chris Harris, Bradley Roby. It was like, well, what player are we supposed to run? Which one's going to work? Brandon Marshall, all those guys, Darren Stewart. I got a lot of memories playing these guys. I think one of probably not my favorite memories, but one of the memories that pops into my mind is obviously I've known Vaughn, played against Vaughn now for 7 years, although I won't play him this year. Never forget one of the first times I played him, I literally caught the snap, and as the ball was coming back to me, Vaughn was even with the football. And I remember catching the ball, taking one step forward. I didn't even take a drop. I took a step forward and he sacked me. And I was just like, what am I supposed to do? What am I supposed to do with that? And it was one of those moments where, you leave that one in the memory banks. You tell your kids about it as he's getting his gold jacket and all that kind of stuff. Also at home when he jumped on me and literally just took the ball from me. And it happened so fast that I hit the ground and then was like, where's the ball? And he was already up celebrating with it. And I was like, I don't know what you want me to do, Coach. I'm sorry. But just some memories of those kind of plays.
Man. Oh, man. Yeah, that's awesome. That's got to put a smile on everyone's face. He's, man, when we talk to him, it's just a guy that is easy to like, and especially with the success that the Broncos had in those years going against him.
Yeah, and what's interesting to look back at Derek Carr is in those games how much trouble the Broncos caused for him. In his first 3 games, guys, against the Broncos, Denver picked him off four times, including, of course, we all remember Chris Harris Jr. taking it to the house in 2015 in Oakland when the Broncos were getting bupkis out of their offense, and Chris provided the touchdown they needed to win that thing 16-10 ultimately. Since that day, guys, there have been, of course, games in 16, 17, 18, and 19. So since then, you're looking at 9 games, and the Broncos haven't picked off Derek Carr. So I think when he speaks of them, he's speaking in terms of respect, deep respect. But I think there's also a level of kind of fondness because Derek Carr, I think he realizes that the games against the Broncos and the challenges that he faced as a quarterback going against those great defenses, they made him grow up. They made him adjust because he's become a different quarterback than he was in those days, a much more precise quarterback, one who went from making a good deal of mental mistakes and mistakes on where to go with the football to one who now is incredibly precise and makes very few mistakes.
Well, and also he can look back on that fondly because none of the guys that he mentioned are playing.
Yeah.
And I mean, Von Miller, the guy he highlighted, isn't playing this weekend. So it's easier to look back when it's in the past, other than if it was in the future. You know, if he was going against Malik Jackson, all the guys he mentioned, Chris Harris, Akib, Vaughn, DeMarcus Ware, it'd probably be a different story. He wouldn't have a smile on his face when telling those stories.
Speaking of Derek Carr, he and Drew Lock have some interesting parallels between the beginning of their careers. And, you know, it's funny reading the responses to this tweet, which came from Josh Dubow of the AP, from Raiders fans thinking that this comparison is an insult to Derek Carr, and Broncos fans thinking that this comparison is an insult to Drew Lock. But we talked about it on whatever day it was. Who can keep track of the days anymore?
Wednesday.
You can, I guess. You know, the Derek Carr mold, obviously you'd like a little more spice from your quarterback, but when you look at the numbers Derek Carr has put up, you will take this from your quarterback. Anyways, this is just a good perspective for people to have on how quarterbacks can improve. Drew Lock through 11 starts, 80.9 passer rating. Derek Carr through 11 starts, 76.7 passer rating. Drew Lock through 11 starts, 6.5 yards per attempt. Derek Carr through 11 starts, 5.5 yards per attempt. Touchdown passes through 11, Derek Carr 14, Drew Lock 13. And interceptions, both had 9. So for all intents and purposes, Drew Lock and Derek Carr had the same start to their careers, with Drew just probably slightly better. And it just shows you, like, it's not always instant for quarterbacks. They get it. They learn it over time. Derek Carr has an incredible touchdown to interception ratio, but he started his career through 11 starts with 14-9, which is just about the same as Drew Lock, 13-9. So just think it's an important perspective for people to have. It's not always instant. And Derek Carr became more accurate. He started pushing the ball more, and he started throwing more touchdowns and less interceptions as he grew in this league.
Well, and then what he did those final 5 games to round out those first 16 starts was he kind of took off. I believe that would be he had 7 touchdowns to 3 interceptions after that. So you kind of got to see that. And so that's what we need to see from Drew Lock, you know, and Drew needs to show us that progression this year. He can't wait for next year. And another parallel between the two, both second-round picks. Of course, Derek went a little earlier in the second round than Drew Lock, but I mean, there's a lot of similarities there. Just the one thing that doesn't strike me as a similarity is I don't think that Drew Lock wears as much makeup as Derek does.
Oh, but I'd say that Drew Lock has more hair product than Derek Carr.
Fair. Yep.
I mean, and speaking of hair product, Zach, how much did it take this morning?
Oh man, when it's short, it doesn't take much at all.
Oh my gosh! I mean,
He woke up like this.
Yeah, I mean, wow. I mean, even by
coffee electrocuted it.
Even by your standards, that's impressive. It looks like, I mean, I was a little worried about you. You stuck your finger into the socket. My goodness.
Yeah, you know what? I meant to push it over before the pod. Forgot.
He wakes up in the morning, gets a little balloon, rubs it on the head, and gets going.
My cat just sits on my head in the morning and does it for me.
That's incredible because my dog sits on my head and nothing like that ever happened.
Okay, so speaking of Drew Lock, let's talk about the offensive game plan to beat this Raiders defense, and also just what Drew Lock needs to do to start tracking towards that good finish to the season that everyone wants to see, except for all the people who have already pronounced his career over and just are hoping that they end up being right.
Be like Derek Carr and see what he's done this year. He has taken some games over. He won that Kansas City game where he went out and threw 3 touchdowns, I believe 300 yards in Kansas City. But for the part, Derek Carr has been a guy that does what the team needs him to do. And Drew Lock needs to do that in every sense. And what I mean is touchdown to interception ratio, but also just controlling what he can control. Don't be shooting the fadeaway jumpers as Pat Shurmur described it yesterday when you're in the pocket. No, instead, just take the play that's there. Don't try to do too much. Drew told us earlier in the season that he was pressing. I don't think Derek Carr presses, and that is probably a very frustrating thing at times when he's taking the checkdowns and not going deep, especially earlier in his career. But also, that's what the Broncos need from Drew Lock now, and that's what Drew Lock needs to do to show that he's the guy, is that he's not going to make critical mistakes at times. So, Drew, you don't have to go out and throw 3 touchdowns and 0 interceptions, but you do need to pick up first downs, and it's not just all on Drew in this game.
Yeah, it should be a game, though, where, guys, he doesn't have to press all that much, at least against this defense. It's shaky at best at times. I mean, obviously, if you take out that Cleveland game where the Raiders defense had the benefit of facing Baker Mayfield and company with 36-mile-an-hour winds whipping from off Lake Erie, you take the rest of their games, guys, and opponents are scoring 5.2 points more than their season-long averages when they take on these Raiders. And in 5 of the other 7 games, guys, teams have gone for over 400 yards, and they've done it with some balance. I mean, you've seen a bunch of 300-yard passing games. You've also seen some teams explode, like the Patriots, of course, ran for 250 on the ground, but then 4 other teams had good. Then 3 other teams of those games that weren't the Cleveland game saw opponents control the game on the ground and go north of 100. So take what's there. The other thing is, some of this is not in Drew Lock's hands. Pat Shurmur has to allow him to go up tempo. I'm not saying do it all the time, but at least have it be an element of the offense. Maybe on the second possession you say, okay, you know what, we're down 3-0, or maybe we're still scoreless. We're going to push the tempo a little bit here, and we're going to go no huddle. Just throw it in throughout the game. Start finding out if there is something to the notion that Drew Lock can always be better when you're going up tempo, when you're going without a huddle.
You know what's really, really quick on that no huddle. That was a huge topic of conversation this week that we had, but also that the Broncos had. And Vic talking about it, Pat Shurmur talking about it, Drew Lock talking about it. Guys, who was the least who was the most opposed to the no huddle when we talked about it with them this week? It was Drew Lock, which was crazy. I mean, Vic Fangio said that the offense has worked when it does that. Pat Shurmur says, I like to go up tempo. And then Drew Lock was the guy that said, when it works, it seems like you're doing everything right, but it doesn't work. And when it doesn't work, it's terrible. So I just found that interesting.
I didn't think that was Drew Lock being against it. I think it was him kind of protecting the Pat Shurmur and the narrative that they need to go no huddle all the time. I just felt like that was a quarterback, kind of playing the middle, playing the being on the fence of being like, well, it can be really good, but it can also be really bad. That's why we don't do it all the time.
I'm not saying he's against it.
No, wrong. I'm sorry, Zach. I think he was protecting the defense because he knows what it's like when you have an offense that's going no huddle and a defense that isn't equipped for it, that struggles to keep up. And all you have to do is go back to the season where he threw 44 touchdown passes, but a bunch of them were kind of garbage time passes. And that was when Mizzou was going up tempo, started 1-5, allowed a couple of 50 burgers early that season, gave up 43 points to Missouri State that year. I think that comment from Drew Lock is something that was illuminated by the past of being on a team that for a while didn't have a competent defense to speak of, and seeing the no huddle put them in some bad situations.
Yeah, and I'm not saying that Drew doesn't like the no huddle. I just found that interesting that the only negative narrative to come from the Broncos this week on the no huddle was from Drew. But saying that, they need to do that. They need to do it before the fourth quarter and see if it's just because defenses are playing the Broncos easier in these fourth quarters and that's allowed the Broncos success, or is it really the no huddle that's helping them? Because you know what? At least try it, Pat. And if you try it in the first quarter and or the second quarter and it doesn't work, well, that's probably not a good sign about what these past 2 fourth quarters have meant, specifically last week when they weren't able to make the comeback. But at least you tried it, because right now You're 3-5. You have to win this game this weekend to keep your season alive. So might as well go out kicking, screaming, and trying everything to give your team a chance to win.
With all of this being said, this is a classic thing that happens where we're using, what's happened the last couple of weeks as a measuring stick for what's going to happen this week. And we'll talk about it a little bit, but after the game, everyone will forget about it again in their judgment of Drew Lock. The Broncos are going to be starting a fifth string right tackle. If you add Juwan James into the mix, we're talking fifth string right tackle. Not 100% yet, but very good chance that Calvin Anderson starts for the Broncos at right tackle. He will be the fifth person on the list to start for to play for the Broncos at right tackle this year. And so because of that, I think that we need to keep an eye on what's going on the right side of that line. And hopefully we're all, telling everyone to hush up during the game, because Calvin Anderson is locking it down and quieting down the right side of that line. But I don't want us to forget that Drew Lock is playing in front of a hodgepodge offensive line.
Yeah. And something that's going to have to help that is the running game. And that's something that I think we're going to see early and we should see often. But that's one thing Pat Shurmur preached on this week when we talked to him was we got to run the ball earlier and better early on. Well, Pat, you got to stick with it. If that's going to be the case, you can't be dropping back 56 times and only running the ball with your two running backs 14 times. You can't do that. Even if you're down 10 points, you got to stick with the run. And guys, Phillip Lindsay is averaging the fifth best yards per carry average in the NFL for a running back, 5.8 yards per carry. He's only had one game where he's had 10 or more carries. That is crazy. And I know, and we've talked about how, Phil was going to be disrespected all season in the eyes of the fans with having Melvin on here. But that's terrible. At least he should be getting 12 carries a game and Melvin getting 12 if that's how they're going to do it. But he's only got more than 10 carries once. That is absolutely crazy.
And that was the game where Melvin Gordon did not play.
Right.
And so think about that. When he and Melvin Gordon have both been in the lineup, it's a counting game. It's 6 carries, 7 carries, 8 carries, 9 carries. It's absurd. Now, I mean, I get the objections to Phil in pass pro, but like we've said, they just have formations where your extra guy in pass pro is going to be a tight end, or maybe you go 2 back. I do think we'll probably see quite a bit of Nick Van Ette in this game. And I imagine that part of that use, guys, is going to be to help out Calvin Anderson on that right flank. But don't be afraid to use Nick Van Ette and put him in the backfield as an H-back and have him pick up some blitzes and then allow you to get Phillip Lindsay out in the field more often, but have him as a receiving target if he's in the pass, if you're in a passing situation rather than just trying to be a speed bump for a blocker, for a pass rusher, pardon me. One other thing to note, guys, we haven't mentioned it, but with Corey Littleton being put on the COVID-19 reserve list for the Raiders. He's their leading tackler. There are probably going to be some opportunities at the second level to have some productive plays with Littleton not in the mix there.
Yeah,
Littleton none.
He should have been a Bronco, right? With a name like that.
That's true. First of all, I think that the narrative that Phillip Lindsay is a liability in pass protection is a false narrative. I think at worst he's an average back in terms of protecting the passer. He's obviously doesn't have a good size for it, but he's willing, which is the first step, I think, for a running back. And I think he's actually better than he gets credit for. Obviously, there was one bad highlight. That's going to happen when you play football. You're going to end up putting some bad tape out there. But I don't think he's a liability at all in pass protection. Well,
here's the unfortunate part for Phil is I do think Melvin is better than him in pass protection. And Phil he hasn't proved that he can be a threat in the passing game this year.
But neither has Melvin Gordon.
Well, way more so. I believe Melvin has 20 catches on the season. Guys, Phil has two catches on the season, which is just crazy. And he has 2 drops on the season as well. So that's just something that's really going to hold him back. And it's a shame. But if I'm the Broncos, because I don't think they trust Phillip Lindsay in the passing game, whether it's pass protection, whether it's catching the ball out of backfield. Well, you know what? We're 8 games through the season. I guess tip your hand. Have Melvin Gordon out there when you're going to throw the ball because you're more comfortable throwing it to him. You're more comfortable having him pass protect, and you'll still run it with him occasionally. To Melvin's credit, he's averaging 4.1 yards per carry. That's the second best mark in his career. But put Phil in there when you're going to run the ball and run the ball more with Phil. And to me, I don't like tipping my hand. But if it means getting the best players in the right situation, then you do that because Phillip Lindsay needs to run the ball more than 10 times per game. And I just think that him in the pass game is really going to hold the coaches back. So just fine. Tip your hand, put Melvin Gordon out there.
Yeah, and unfortunately, guys, the numbers actually do show that Phillip Lindsay's struggling in pass pro. He's had 20 pass pro opportunities this year, according to Pro Football Focus, and he's allowed the quarterback to be hit twice, so that's once every 10. By comparison, Melvin Gordon hasn't been credited with a quarterback hit allowed in 50 pass pro snaps this year.
Yeah, I mean, 1 in 10 though, that's 10% of the time you can get away with that.
That's actually really bad though for running backs league wide.
What I'm saying is, going along what Zach is saying, is you don't need to have Phillip Lindsay out there for 10 passing snaps every game. You can have him out there for 5. You can have him out there for 6, to keep the defense honest. But what I'm saying is Melvin Gordon has not been a threat. Like, no team is saying like, wow, we really got to account for Melvin Gordon coming out of the backfield. Like, he hasn't done. He had that 1 touchdown in the Steelers game, which was a great throw, great catch. But he's not making defenses. He's not keeping defenses honest by being a threat coming out of the backfield. So, yes, you don't want your quarterback to get pressured based on the running back. But there's a lot of different ways to cover up for that. And also, you don't need to be putting Phillip Lindsay on the field for 10 passing snaps every game. Put him on the field and hand him the ball. And run screens. My God, please run screens. Screens to Melvin, screens to Phil, screens to Noah Fant. I don't care who they're throwing screens to. Just throw some screens, please, to keep the defense honest. They're just not doing anything to make the defense think twice about what's going on out there. It's way too easy. Way too easy.
You have such a good screen team. Guys, it's not crazy to go through the Broncos' top weapons and say that Jerry Jeudy may be, quote, the worst screen option that you have, because Noah Fant, dangerous in a tight end screen. Phillip Lindsay and Melvin Gordon should be pretty dangerous in a running back screen. KJ Hamler should be extremely dangerous in the screen game. I still think Jerry Jeudy would be very good in a screen game, but I mean, he may be down there with the running backs, which is exciting, and that's why you should be using it.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to end the live portion here on a good note. We have a question here from Trotface, who says, who's had the better season so far, Jeudy or Ruggs? Well, this one's easy. It is Jerry Jeudy in a landslide. And Henry Ruggs has been okay. I think he has only 10 catches on the season, but he has had some big ones. But it's been very clear that Jerry Jeudy is the more consistent and more consistently a threat to the defense.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. All the numbers would back that. And I actually asked John Gruden why they decided to pick Henry Ruggs over Jerry Jeudy. And I think he was telling the truth when he said we're happy with him still, because he mentioned Henry Ruggs isn't getting a lot of catches, but just him being on the field makes the defense be honest to the deep ball. And so I believe that they're happy with their guy, and the Broncos are happy with their guy that they got, at least right now. Now, I think maybe in 5 years, when Jerry Jeudy is clearly an elite receiver in the league, and maybe Henry Ruggs doesn't develop into that and he's just a speed guy, then they'll regret it. But Henry Ruggs just being on the field does force defenses to react differently. Saying that, I think the Broncos got the better receiver.
Well, the Broncos, I think, needed the guy who was a little more of a complete package in terms of their offense, and they should be able to get that vertical speed elsewhere. Jeudy gets the nod because he's the more complete receiver. He's more involved in the offense. The one thing that you want to see Jeudy clean up, of course, is the drops, and another key one last week. Henry Ruggs, fewer opportunities, but no drops so far this year.
Yeah, I also think though that his catch rate is like under 50% right now. So not quite on the same page with Derek Carr just yet. So, anyways, before we go, I want to let you guys know that if you sign up right now at thednvr.com and become a member and use the code Broncos, one, you're going to help us with a big competition that's going on within the DNVR family. But two, you are going to get a free t-shirt of your choice from the DNVR locker, a free mask, and a free sticker pack of your choice from the locker as well. It's an awesome deal. You get all geared up and of course, get in on all of the content at the DNVR as well. Not just our Broncos content, but our content for all our teams. You get in on the Discord, which is pretty awesome. It's not talked about nearly enough. There's just a chat room right now full of Broncos fans just chatting about what's going on in Broncos country. So check it out. Use the code Broncos when you sign up to help us win this competition and get in on this awesome deal.
All right, Ryan, let's get to our picks this week. And I'm trying to find the lines for the other games, and I'm not seeing them up right now. Well, the Chiefs are off. Are the Chargers also on a bye week this week? Oh, no, they're playing the Dolphins. Okay, so Chargers going into Miami to play the Dolphins. Dolphins 1.5 point favorite. This is, of course, back-to-back picks. Tua versus Justin Herbert.
This is an interesting one. I'm going to have to see it from the Chargers before I pick them. So as long as they remain the chokers, I'm going to pick against them. Give me Tua, who really found his stride last week in his second start.
Yeah, I've got to go Miami as well, even though they're looking at playing this game without Kyle Van Noy and Christian Wilkins. So their defense is going to be hamstrung. But you have to pick Miami until the Chargers show that they can get something done in a close and late situation. I mean, they've got to prove that they're not going to just fritter away the game the way they have week after week after week. And at some point, they're going to figure it out. But until that day comes, especially going cross country, I've got to take the Dolphins and Tua in this one, guys.
Yeah, I'm not going to pick against the Chargers here. I'm going to pick for Tua. My guy, Tua, I think he gets it done. And what a little stretch that the Dolphins have. Last week, it's Kyler against Tua. This week, it's Justin Herbert against Tua. Next week, it's Tua versus Drew Lock. That's some fun football for Miami to be watching. And I think Tua gets it done again, along with Miami's good defense. So I think that is a fun one. And then, guys, like I said, the Chiefs are off this week. So they can't get the win. That's fortunate for everyone in Broncos country. And, of course, Broncos going into Las Vegas on DraftKings Sportsbook right now. The line is set at Raiders -4. What are you guys doing against the spread and straight up?
Mace, I'll let you start.
I was going to let you start.
Oh, man. This is the first one where I have not been very confident in the Broncos covering the spread. The Raiders offense is so multiple, and the Broncos defense is in a serious rut right now. So on paper, it just doesn't feel good to me. I don't think I've picked against the Broncos on the spread all year, and unfortunately, that's a direction I'm going this week. I just have a really hard time seeing how the defense does enough to keep the offense in the game. I think the offense does a little better this week. I think they get rolling. I think Drew Lock ends up having a decent game, but I don't trust the defense. I can't believe I'm saying that. It should be the other way around. But if they give up 30 points again, I don't think the offense is going to be able to get enough done. I always like to set the number at 24. And I think the offense can get to 24. I don't know if the defense can hold them under 24. So unfortunately, I think the Broncos lose this one, something along the lines of 31-24.
Wow. I never thought I'd hear that, Ryan. I thought we were ending this pod on a good note. Man, that's a black hole if you ask me.
It's tough. And it won't be cold because it's indoors. So even when it's climate controlled, it's tough.
But Zach, it's not a black hole anymore. It's a Roomba.
Yes, it is the Roomba.
That's true. Well, we're just getting swept away by Brian's pick now.
I got
Oh,
my
man.
Roomba is white because I didn't want it to just look like the Raiders stadium moving around my floor all the time.
Oh man, man alive, guys. Well, you know, I want to pick the Broncos to win straight up. It's hard right now, even though I think they're going to put some points on the board. If you take out that Cleveland game, like I said, the Raiders allowing 5.2 points more than the average of their opponent's score, and that puts the Broncos right at 27 points for this game. If they score about 5 points above their season-long average. Of course, the problem is I think the Raiders are going to put up points. I've got the Broncos beating the spread, but losing on the scoreboard 30-27.
Yeah, guys, I feel so differently about this game than you guys. At the beginning of this week, so good about the Broncos' chances, not just to cover the spread, but to win straight up. Because the Raiders right now, according to Pro Football Reference, their estimated win total, I believe, is just over, it's right around 3 or 4 games is what they should be to where all of their stats are. They don't do really one thing in particular very well, except Derek Carr is just playing out of his mind. But again, he's not taking over games consistently, and they don't turn the ball over. So they have those two things that are really going for them. And those are two things that you can't deny. Other than that, they run the ball a lot, but they don't average a great yards per carry. You can run against their defense. You can pass against their defense. There's a lot of things you can do to win this game. And the Broncos have to win this game. So for all of those reasons, I really like the Broncos to go in there and win this game straight up until yesterday. Yesterday when we find out the Broncos are going to be on 5th string right tackle, most likely, and without Shelby Harris. Those two things to me just flip this game. Now I don't have the Broncos winning. I don't even have the Broncos covering the spread. The score I really like is so close to Mace's 31-27, but because that's pushing, that's the score I'm going to go with, but because it's pushing, I'm going to go 31-26. I think the Raiders cover the spread in this one.
Oh man, I can't believe we're going to have our picks on social media on Sunday. I'm going to be standing alone with orange next to my name in orange and white. I can't believe I'm the optimist here, but I do get what you're saying. Like I'm not as, believe it or not, I'm not as worried about Calvin Anderson as I would have been with Jake Rogers. And honestly, with all respect to Calvin Anderson and Jake Rogers, I don't think Anderson can do worse than Jake Rogers did in the second half and did last year, even though he did get a game ball for one of his performances last year. But losing Shelby Harris is the one that got me from thinking the Broncos win this game straight up when the week starts. I'm thinking Shelby back, Boye back, Callahan back. They're going to pull this one off. Without Shelby Harris, I feel like it might be too much for the run defense to bear. Josh Jacobs, I think, will get into a groove, will tote the ball more than 20 times, and that's the Raiders playing the game they want to play.
Yeah, I'm also just testing out to see if I can get some reverse juju going here. I've picked the Broncos against the spread every game. Now, they have covered the spread in 5 out of 8.
Yeah, so 5-3.
Yep, they're 5-3 against the spread, but only 3-5 in those games. So I got to see if I pick them to not cover the spread, what does their record end up being in those games? So we'll see what happens. I don't think I do think there are paths for the Broncos to win, but a big part of that path is the defense. And I just don't trust them right now, especially without their entire starting defensive line.
Well, and that's fair. And the Raiders are 4-0 when they score more than 30 points this year. In fact, 4 of their 5 wins, they've scored more than 30 points. So that's going to be their formula to win, and the Broncos just don't match it well this week.
So I hope we're all wrong on the scoreboard being straight up, because if this team is 3-6, the conversations, unfortunately, probably start changing about what we're discussing regarding the Broncos short and long term.
Possible. Yeah, it's possible. I mean, you definitely got to win one out of these next 2, and they're both against teams that are playing pretty darn good football. So got to get one of these. We'll see if they get it this week. We will, of course, continue this conversation in the podcast format. We'd love if you guys listen in. And of course, if you subscribe using the code Broncos, you can get in on the conversation in the comment section. But for now, on the live side of things, that is going to wrap it up for us. So we'll talk to you guys later.